It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. We begin with a global honor. St. Lucia has conferred its highest national honor, that's the Knight Commander of the Order of St. Lucia, on President Bola Tinubu in recognition of his efforts to strengthen the historical and cultural bonds between Africa and the Caribbeans. According to a statement yesterday by the presidential spokesperson, Bayo Nanuga, the formal investiture was performed by the Governor-General of St. Lucia, Errol Charles, on Monday night at the official reception for President Tinubu at the Government House, Morne Fortune, St. Lucia. Tinubu, who will now add Sir to his numerous titles, expressed deep appreciation to the government and people of St. Lucia for the honor, the statement added. Currently on a state visit to the Caribbean nation, the Nigerian president said he was humbled to receive the honor, noting that the recognition symbolized a deepening of historic and cultural connections between Nigeria and St. Lucia. Well, back home to opposition politics, as in what looks like the first major breakthrough in the efforts of the opposition coalition to wrestle power from the ruling All Progressives Congress in 2027, the movement late last night formally adopted the African Democratic Congress, ADC, as its official political platform for the 2027 elections. The coalition concluded plans to unveil the party today at a ceremony in Abuja, where it intends to make public the interim leaders and members of the party. Already, upon the adoption of ADC, the coalition appointed former Senate President David Mark as its national chairman and former governor of Osun State and immediate past Minister of Interior Ralph Aregbesola as national secretary, while former Minister of Sports Bolaji Abdullahi was made spokesperson of the party. Some prominent leaders of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, called on other members of the party to join the coalition ahead of the 2027 election. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, former Jigawa State Governor Sule Lamido, former Minister of Foreign Affairs Tom Ikimi, former Nigerian ambassador to China Aminu Wali, and former national chairman of PDP Uche Secondus were among the party's leaders who called for a rethink of the current political situation. Now to some economic news. FGN bonds contributed over 59.796 trillion naira, or 79.85% to the federal government's 74.887 trillion naira domestic debt obligations as of the first quarter of 2025, ending March 31st, 2025. Now, these were contained in the latest public debt figures released by the Debt Management Office. Total debt stock, comprising debt owed by the government at the center, the 36 states of the Federation, and the Federal Capital Territory. The total public debt stock of the federal and state governments, as well as the Federal Capital Territory, also posted 3.3% quarter-on-quarter rise of 4.72 trillion naira from 144.67 trillion naira as of December 31st, 2024, to 149.39 trillion naira by March 31st, 2025. The DMO data showed that of the 78.56 trillion naira total domestic debt obligations of the federal and state governments, as well as the FCT as of March 31st, 2025, the federal government accounted for the chunk of 74.89 trillion, while the balance of 3.869 trillion naira was for the states and FCT. Now, finally, the remains of prominent Nigerian businessman and philanthropist Alhaji Aminu Dantata were laid to rest in Medina, Saudi Arabia on Tuesday. Dantata, who died on Saturday in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates, was buried at the Bakia Cemetery. Earlier, a prayer was held for the deceased at the Holy Prophet's Mosque after the Asr prayer. His funeral prayer was attended by hundreds of people who offered prayers for the repose of his soul. Business mogul Dantata, an uncle of Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote, leaves behind 3 wives, 21 children, and 121 grandchildren. May his soul rest in peace, and we continue to condole with his family, his loved ones, and all those around him.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely want to re-echo our condolences to the entire Dantata family, which sounds vast, not only in persons, but just in terms of legacy. So his loss will definitely be felt. And I think that his burial taking place in the Islamic holy city of Medina is just a great example of the importance he had when it comes to his deen and his religion. So I'm sure that many people will be extending their prayers onto him as he makes his journey into the afterlife, and pray that God rests him well and keeps him in good company in heaven. So we are extending all of our condolences. Also, a huge congratulations to the President receiving that national honor in St. Lucia. I do know that when we were talking about this, when you all were talking about this, a lot of conversations about perhaps juggling priorities when it comes to what is important to Nigeria at this time, but also in the same vein, making sure that we can highlight the importance of having a robust foreign policy. What we are seeing with Nigeria, and this honor, is just an example of the seeming years of dedicated effort to build bilateral trades between the African continent and the Caribbean region. So if we look back a few years, Afreximbank have definitely led a lot of this effort, trying to build and foster relations between different African countries and different regions, different countries within the Caribbean. And that's why we're seeing the African Caribbean Investment Forum, which we covered last year, and also a lot of Afreximbank events taking place within the Caribbean, just to highlight what we're seeing. So that's Grenada, St. Lucia, which is where the president received this honor, but also the likes of Bahamas, because when you look at that region of the world, a lot of the black spaces in the Caribbean, they do a lot of their economic trade, a lot of their international trade with the United States only. So here we're seeing an opportunity to really address and reopen real trade ties for more people, more black people, more African people around the world. And I think that this is something that should definitely be honored and congratulated. So we do extend our congratulations to the president receiving an honor. So not only is he giving them out, he's also receiving them too. And it just shows that there is a mutual respect between what we're seeing in our country. It's definitely something that is being noticed by other powers and other countries around the world. And we can only hope that this will materialize into real investment and trade for us here on the African continent, and specifically here in Nigeria.
Okay, so congratulations to President Tinubu on the highest national honor. You know, he also went visiting around, visited a school named after a Nobel laureate, St. Louis in St. Lucia and the likes, visited a couple of places, then he was given that national honor, you know, which is sort of like cementing the relationship, you know, between Nigeria and the Caribbean. And like you said rightly, Afrexim has done some work. In fact, Afrexim has hosted a couple of, you know, its trade conferences there so that you can have a coalition. I mean, that's good on the surface. But you see, a lot of people miss the point. Yes, you can say some bank transactions have happened probably between Nigeria and, you know, Barbados and the likes. That's good on the surface. A lot of people miss the point of what we're saying. And the attempt to be able to glorify the strip shouldn't be lost on all of us. What we are saying is, we are not saying don't go out there to St. Lucia and the Caribbean. No. We are saying face what is happening in your country before you go out there and give scholarships in St. Lucia. It's not too hard to do. I'll give you an instance. I was listening to an in-depth report as regards the victims of flood in Mokwa. The government promised them 1 million for every family that died. Some of the victims said they have not completely received the money because they said some of them don't have accounts, or they have OP accounts that cannot carry such volumes. So a lot of people felt left out. Somebody that was called said, okay, I've received some of it. I have 9 family members that died. I received 4 million. And this money is for them to be able to rebuild their life. So we have not effectively even catered to that problem. Once the government made a donation of 3 billion, and that was it. People are still in the IDP camps in Mokwa. If it's not for the NGOs, the NGOs are buying tankers of water by the day. Have we, as a government and as a people, sorted out the people in Mokwa before we're going to give scholarships in? I mean, there are already IDP camps in the country. What we are saying is, as you do to St. Lucia, do within. That's all we are saying. And we are not saying don't go to the Caribbean and talk trade with the entire Caribbean that the GDP is $135 billion. We are saying do within. Because you see, A lot of people are suffering and they are poor here, and they need that lease of life here. Look at FCT, for instance, schools are out. Just imagine that. Most populous bracket, Nigeria is known for educational prowess. But schools are out. Primary school enrollment rate have been dropping all these years. People are withdrawing their kids from public-private schools to, what's it called, to private schools, which was not the case before. Maybe we had leaders in this country. In fact, they abused him then, like of Jack Conde. They said he was building poultries. But he was able to get an uptick in schools. So what we are saying is, let's be circumspect. There are a lot of problems we have here. That's all we're saying. I mean, I don't have problems with cultural terms. That thing is, all of that is good when your home front is good. Because you see, the respect you get internationally is how good your home front is. That's what you fail to realize. Nigeria's passport today is one of the worst rated in the world. Don't you know there's a reflection on your home front? If your economy is viable on the home front and everything, you think your people will become to all sorts of atrocities abroad and things like that, and your passport will be rated very lowly.
I understand. I mean, these things
so
can
you
be
need to
happening
fix
in
your
tandem
local economy.
simultaneously.
Other nations are the ones have done it. At some point, they used to have racial slurs against the Chinese people. Once the Chinese started to get their economy right, they respect them too. Moving on to the coalition of coalition people. See, there are some myths in Nigerian politics. Number one, the myth is politicians that have been think they can upset the apple cart. It's a myth. You see, I see a lot of the people put together in the coalition. I'd like to ask them one question. Is it because they are disgruntled with President Tinubu or because they truly love Nigeria? People like Rauf Aregbesola in the fold. Rauf Aregbesola that used to be President Tinubu's ride or die. Is it because he's having a back and forth that started with a supremacy battle in the state of Osun, like they call it? Or is it because of the love of Nigeria? Because you see, when you see people like Rauf Aregbesola there, what's the bona fide? These were the people too that served in the last government, or Buhari government, that we abused so badly, that were the cause of this problem. They were the one printing money excessively. So all of a sudden, we are seeing the likes of Atiku Abubakar, we are seeing the likes of Sule Lamido. Have all these people officially left the PDP, or they are going to tender they are leaving the PDP? So at first, the truth is we should ask ourselves the question, because President Tinubu will not take this line low. Is it for the love of Nigeria or for the love of self? You can also make that argument if you want to challenge me, because I like to challenge my own point. That was it for the love of Nigeria, President Tinubu started the coalition too with Buhari and the likes, just to, or for the love of power? It's a fair argument. Secondly, you know me, I don't like to deceive myself. See, do these people have money? Because, you see, we can't deceive ourselves. There's been a bastardization of the moral ethos in this country. Obesere sang a song in the 90s. He said, waiting spoil Lagos. Egunje spoil Lagos. Sha'abamu. Egunje means bribe. Truth has to be said. If they don't have money, they can't upset the apple cart. President Tinubu is known to have arsenals. He deployed that in the last election. I was in financial arsenal. Also, now that he's an incumbent and he knows how to play the political game, it's going to be hard for them. So do all of these people, do they have money put together? Because it is sad, money is not supposed to play a role in our politics, but it plays a role. And it's a cocktail. We've impoverished people so much that when you give them any amount of money, they take it. Third point, who will emerge presidential candidates? That's where the problem is going to start. Will Atiku say, I want to try one more time? Or is it going to be Peter Obi? Or they are going to split along their ranks and Peter Obi will go and run. If he runs on his own, he's going to split votes. Any split of votes might or might not favor President Tinubu, but I would think might probably favor President Tinubu. Another point is, what hold do these people have on the north? And is the northern vote still as viable as before? Because you see, when you look at, since Beavers came in, when you look at the votes that come out from the KKK states, it has dropped tremendously to what used to happen in the 2015 elections of this world, though. So are those numbers still viable? And this is one that President Tinubu has consolidated on parts of the Southwest and everything. Anyway, you had PDP governors in Delta, for instance, but Labour Party still won that part. So it's always the people's vote. The question is, as you asked the question yesterday, is the Labour Party still solid in those states? That's another big question we should ask. But most importantly, the Northwest votes, those pockets of vote, is it as viable as it used to be? When you bring it down to the numbers, it will still tilt the balance. But it used to produce those big juicy numbers as it used to be, like the days of Jonathan's election where we had 25 million votes. I would like to see, and the last point I want to make, this scenario I want to make is, very soon they will start infiltrating their folks in the coalition. Are they ready for that? Because they will send people amongst their folks. They will fight. They will fight over positions. I hear Bolaji Abdullah is going to be their public decent human being and all of that. But when their fights start coming, fight of power and might, would they be able to settle it out? I mean, these are some of the questions I want to ask.
Yes, still several questions to be asked about the coalition, especially after that image surfaced from that communique, which was said to be from PDP, those disgruntled from PDP. However, of course, many people are saying, are waiting to see what will transpire today at 2 p.m. because so far we have not seen the name of, in this latest communications, we have not seen Peter Obi, we have not seen Rotimi Amechi. Of course, later today when the ADC is unveiled as their official vehicle, we'll get to see which of the politicians will show up for that. They may not hold any official capacity yet in the party, any leadership positions in the party, but that will allow us to be in a position to deepen our permutations and our predictions about what will happen, because there is still a question around where Peter Obi is going to decide to plant his feet. We're still waiting on an official position on that. However, Atiku Abubakar, David Mark, Uche Secondus, Leo Limoke, Ralph Aregbesola, who accepted the role of the National Secretary after there had been initial reports that his wife had urged him to please not take the role because she felt that he should take some time out to rest for now. But it seems that there was a lot of pressure on him to eventually take the position. I was particularly interested in some of his inputs concerning what he hopes this coalition will be. And he made reference to South Africa's African National Congress, the ANC, which is a 100-year-old political party which was built on fundamental ideals of ending apartheid and empowering black people and creating economic empowerment for the common man in South Africa. Now, 100 years later, some might say that a lot of that has been eroded. The question is, are we sure we want to model an ADC after a party like an ANC that has failed to empower its people in a dramatic way, that has now been linked with state capture in its deepest form, that has created clientelism and elitism in South African economy in some of the deepest ways? The South African economy that used to be one of the brightest shining stars of Africa is currently going through some of its greatest difficulties. So I question making such a bold statement and saying that, well, we love that the ANC is people-centric, so we want to emulate that. However, yes, he acknowledged that the ANC has its own problems. But we need to be careful in this messaging, because it was just yesterday that the acting chairman of the APC had made a statement saying he's not worried about a coalition because this coalition only exists in conference rooms in Abuja. That was his statement. He said the coalition is around elites who gather under air conditioning in Abuja, but the coalition doesn't exist among the people. And that's what we will now wait to see, is whether there is a grassroots support behind this coalition. Yes, the argument is that PDP has arguably one of the deepest grassroots structures across the country. But how much of that goodwill, how much of that political will from the people would these gentlemen, many of whom are disgruntled from the PDP, be able to carry into a coalition? That's number one. Number two, there needs to be a greater messaging around the coalition than unseating the current president. Is there a compelling selling point for this coalition that will drive people in their numbers to want to follow who they are? And of course, as was rightfully said by Rufai, who is going to lead this coalition? Who is the presidential candidate? Because for now, all the body language points towards the fact that Atiku Abubakar is highly likely to give it another go. How is that going to look? We've joked in the past that Atiku Abubakar is actually the African leader who currently holds the record for highest attempts at the presidency, highest number of failed attempts at the presidency. We wait to see as this continues to unfold. And another issue that needs to be unpacked in great detail is this allegation that the coalition has settled for the ADC and abandoned the registration of ADA, the ADA, because they feel strongly that INEC wants to frustrate this process. However, we're not seeing any tangible evidence of this. Just last week, INEC released the full list of over 100 parties that are expressing their interest, parties in society that are expressing their interest to be formally registered. It has just been a week. Those expression of interest have been acknowledged. It's a legal process that one has to go through. So this we do plead for them to share whatever evidence they may have or what experiences they have had with INEC that are leading them to believe so strongly that INEC is currently being used as a tool to block the registration of new political parties, because that is a heavy allegation and we need further information around that. Well, we'll wait until 2 p.m. today when the ADC shall be revealed as the formal platform of the coalition. And from there, we'll be able to draw deeper permutations about what the implications will be for 2027. Very quickly to the statement from the Debt Management Office, which is in essence telling us that the majority of our domestic debt now is now accredited to FG bonds. But this is a positive development in many ways, because it also shows that we have evolved from the era of ways and means. We've evolved from the era of dependency of this sporadic and unplanned and opaque borrowing from the CBN that was hugely inflationary and detrimental to the economy. However, this type of reliance on bonds also needs to be handled with care, because the bonds in themselves are not perfect. The interest rates are high, for one, and number two, what you're doing is you're now crowding out the private sector. If government borrowing is now dominating, then it leaves several questions as to the participation of the private sector, and then of course, what is the sustainability around this? These are some of the key questions that we want to know. Now, still on the issue of debt, separating FG debt from state debts, I think there's the deeper conversations that need to be had around how the states are doing well in managing some of their debts. I believe Jigawa remains the least indebted state in Nigeria. Lagos State, Rivers State, Delta State are currently the highest indebted states in Nigeria. Now, some might say that, well, this is because they have more economic activity happening there, so their borrowing is in essence not bad debt. However, we need to now ask ourselves questions around the viability of some of the huge debts and what they are tied to. Lagos State is often an example that's given because we do see the scale of development happening in Lagos State. We need to ask questions about what's happening in Rivers State, what's happening in Delta State, especially concerning the fact that we haven't seen a governor in Rivers State, an active governor. The governor is suspended. There has been so much turmoil going on in the state. So the question is, what is the legitimacy of this borrowing that has been going on in Rivers State? Apart from that, there are some states, unfortunately, like Niger State, Borno State, who continue to grapple with increased borrowing. And of course, that alludes to some of the challenges, especially security challenges, climate change challenges that we're seeing in those states, that is making it difficult for those governments to be able to become productive. And even their reliance on FAC and an increased FAC is not allowing these states to move forward. And that's purely because they have such deeply embedded challenges. So there's still several things that need to be broken down with regards to the debt profile of our states and, of course, our federal debt profile. Now, very quickly as I close, a huge congratulations to Sir Bola Ahmed Tinubu, as he shall now be referred to, for that honor in St. Lucia. I believe the debates and the conversations will continue to happen. They're healthy. It's important for us to meet and pursue the superior argument. But one thing cannot be taken away from the fact that Nigerians on a whole have now been given a new, shall I say, a new consciousness to the Caribbean, to the potential that the Caribbean might offer to Nigeria, and what strengthening bonds and ties between Nigeria and the Caribbean can possibly do for both regions moving forward.